God does exist. In this project, we'll go over my reasons why I believe that God exists. And we'll also go over the scientific. Let's go to the category. Let's go over legal evidence, testimonial evidence, scientific evidence, historical evidence, and the resurrection of Jesus. Jesus has always been my life, so I'm still pursuing Christ every single day. This is legal evidence. It's called an act of God. A legal person refers to a human or non-human entity that is treated as a person for limited legal purposes. Typically, a legal person can soon be sued, own property, and enter contracts. The American court system allows people to sue God under an act of God clause. The law is defined as an unforeseeable natural event that is without human intervention that could not have been prevented even with reasonable care. Acts of God are also known as acts of nature. Although such events can lead to injuries and damages, no party can be held liable for causing. Acts of God examples are floods, rainstorms, hurricanes, tornadoes, windstorms, wildfires, tsunamis, earthquakes, blizzards, pandemics, and lightning storms. As defined by insurance companies, an act of God is an event that cannot be predicted or prevented by clients, and therefore was not their fault. If a policyholder can prove so, they may be eligible for insurance benefits under their standard homeowners policy. Social policies include act of God clause, which protects them from suffering damages caused by natural occurrences. An act of God limits or completely prevents a policyholder from receiving coverage. Act of God court cases. There's the U.S. Constitution, Section 4 of the Flag Code in 1954. President Dwight Eisenhower encouraged Congress to add the words under God, breaking 31 for what they should say today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There's Penrose v. God, 1960. Lightning struck a house in Phoenix, Arizona. The home's owner, Betty Penrose, sued God for damages, 1969. Penrose case ended up going to trial, and she won by default. And there's Chambers v. God, 2008. Nebraska State Senator Ernie Chambers filed a suit against God. God was sued for causing bad things in the world, like natural disasters and war. Eventually, the suit was dismissed. These cases do establish God as a legal person. There's laws. Every country has their own set of laws. For example, let's stick with the United States law. The United States has 3 levels of crime: felonies, misdemeanors, and infractions. Felonies include terrorism, larceny, treason, arson, murder, rape, robbery, burglary, kidnapping, and drug trafficking. Misdemeanors include DUIs, domestic violence, shoplifting. Infractions include traffic offenses, jaywalking, some other minor drug possession charges. All laws originate from pre-existing law or rational thought. There's moral codes. A lot of moral codes throughout human history have been used to influence today's laws. The United States common law traces its roots to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. The founding fathers based the Bill of Rights on English common law. Other forms of moral codes that have been introduced by history are Sharia law, Ten Commandments, Dharma, Hammurabi's Code, and Confucian ethics. Why we have humans throughout history feel the need to have a moral code supposed to act on pure instinct. Perhaps even if always has some kind of rational thought to distinguish yourselves from other organisms. And evolution explains morality. Early human individuals who were socially selected for collaborative foraging through their choice of partners developed new ways of relating to others. The statement is true, but how did humans become socially selected? Some people might argue natural selection is survival of the fittest. Natural selection is the mechanism of evolution. Organisms that are more adapted to their environment and are more likely to survive and pass on the genes that aided their success. This process causes species to change and diverge over time. Organisms that have successfully adapted to their environment are fit to survive, but the length of survival is not guaranteed. Survival of the fittest in terms of evolution. Animal that is fit if one that is adapted to its environment. This concept is at the core of natural selection. Humanistic setting, survival of the fittest allows individuals to both thrive and survive in their environment by outcompeting for limited resources. Qualities such as strength and speed were beneficial to our ancestors, allowing them to survive in a demanding environment. Richard Dawkins states that life today arose through by purely evolution and competition. And while yes, survival of the fittest is true, but within a limited capacity. Genes do compete with one another as well as individuals, tribes, and species, but they also cooperate. The success of the human species is clearly due to its ability to cooperate in large numbers. Why is this the case? If survival of the fittest was all that there is, and there's no God or afterlife, then we as humans should be killing each other to ensure our own survival, but that's not the case. We have laws that protect property, life, and liberties. We also have a justice system to hold people accountable who impede on our civil liberties. The majority of Americans are law-abiding citizens, while leaving a minority of citizens in prison or on probation. Survival of the fittest can't be the answer for everyone's moral value. Maybe a valid explanation for maybe a minority of citizens who are criminals, but it can't explain the majority. The majority must have some higher moral ground that they cling on to. There is the Bible's explanation of morality, Genesis 1:26. Then God said, let us make mankind our image and our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, birds in the sky, over the livestock, and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. Genesis 1:27. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. Genesis 1:28. God blessed them, said to them, be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish from the sea and the birds, and the sky, over every living creature that moves along the ground. Humans were made to rule over animals, not be amongst them. This is why humans are more intelligent, sophisticated than other organisms. The designer who is righteous and just makes sure his creation possesses rational thought to distinguish themselves from other organisms. We would also give us the ability to establish more codes and governments to ensure cooperation and survival of the human race. Evolution is just an excuse for us to act on our animalistic instincts. If we act on instinct, we would care what's best for ourselves and not others. If we only care about ourselves, we will help the animals they are in need. If other humans need help, we will help that person. All of humankind is focused on their own well-being. Morality and rational thought are not here by reason. They're here by reason, not by coincidence. Morality must have come from someone who possesses omniscience. There are individuals that attest to God's existence. Aristotle. There must be an immortal, unchanging being, ultimately responsible for all wholeness, orderless, sensible world. Albert Einstein. I believe in Spinoza's God who reveals himself in orderly harmony of what exists, not a God who concerns himself with the fates and actions of human beings. Isaac Newton. Plato's my friend. Aristotle's my friend. But my greatest friend is truth. God is the same God, always and everywhere. He is omnipresent, not virtually only, but also substantially. For virtue cannot subsist without substance. God made and governs the world invisibly and has commanded us to love and worship him and no other God, to honor our parents, masters, love our neighbors as ourselves, and to be temperate, just, peaceable, and to be merciful, even to brute beasts. There's Francis Collins. I believe God did intend in giving us intelligence, give us the opportunity to investigate, appreciate the wonders of his creation. He is not threatened by our scientific adventures. There's Charles Darwin. It seems to me absurd to doubt that a man may be an ardent theist and an evolutionist. I've never been an atheist since denying the existence of a God. And there's Copernicus. To know the mighty works of God, to comprehend his wisdom. And majesty of power, to appreciate and agree the wonderful working of his laws. Surely all this must be a pleasing, acceptable mode, worship to the Most High, to whom ignorance cannot be more grateful than knowledge. And there's the scientific evidence. What do Bible and science agree on? Both agree that the universe has a beginning. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. The Lord made the seas, all that is in them. But on the seventh day, he rested. Neil deGrasse Tyson, yes, the universe has a beginning. Yes, the universe continues to evolve. And yes, every one of our bodies' atoms is traceable to the Big Bang into a thermonuclear furnace with high mass stars. Both Earth was primordial. Now the Earth was formless and empty. Primordial soup is a mixture of inorganic compounds with water and primitive Earth. So both suggest that the Earth was primitive at its very start. But over time it was filled with rivers, vegetation, and life. They both agree that life arose from non-life. Genesis 27, God formed the man from the dust of the ground. There's abiogenesis, which is the original evolution of life from inorganic substances. There's natural selection, which is used to diversify organisms, with simpler organisms appearing first and humans last. Natural selection over here says is the differential survival and reproduction of individuals due to differences in phenotype. It is a key mechanism of evolution. Very evolution states that all extraterrestrial organisms share a common genetic heritage. The simpler organisms appearing first, complex organisms appearing last. There's the Big Bang. It's how astronomers explain the way the universe began. It is the idea that the universe began just a single point, then expanded and stretched to grow as large as it is right now. Einstein believed the universe was past eternal and collapsing within on itself. He was proved wrong by Edwin Hubble and George Lemaitre. In 1929, Hubble observed that not only galaxies were moving away from the Milky Way, but that more distant galaxies were also receding more quickly. That is, the universe was not eternal, but it's expanding. This observation led Belgian priest George Lemaitre to propose in 1931 that the universe originated from a small compact state, what he called a cosmic egg, what is now called the Big Bang. If the universe had an origin, it must have cause for its existence. This establishes the cosmological argument. Cosmological argument claims the existence of God can be inferred from facts concerning causation with respect to the universe or some totality of objects. Premise 1, wherever it begins to exist has a cause. Premise 2, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Premise 3, causes spaceless, time is immaterial, I would say intelligent. Foreign scientists have attested to the beginning of the universe are Arvin Board, Alan Guth, Alexander Velikan, and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Alexander Velikan, cosmologists can no longer hide the problem beyond the possibility of passage on the universe. In order to escape, they must face the problem of the cosmic beginning. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yes, the universe has had a beginning. Yes, the universe continues to evolve. And yes, every one of our body's atoms is traceable to the Big Bang and to thermonuclear furnace within high mass stars. Standard Big Bang model cannot explain where the hierarchy of the structure came from, as it cannot explain the origin of the structure. The Big Bang model points to the universe having a beginning. So what or who caused the origin of the universe? The Big Bang shows that our universe once comprised a single point. This point expanded, which caused space-time, matter, energy to come into existence. Space-time, matter, and energy are the ingredients that make up the natural world. The book of Genesis, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the Big Bang model are all in agreement that there had to be a cause to our natural world. The natural world was caused by supernatural. While science can't explain the supernatural, the Bible can. The Bible is true, science history will verify. According to the Bible, God created the heavens and the earth. God created the universe. As humans with our intellect, we cannot cure the common cold, and I find it reasonable to believe that an intelligent being or unexplained natural force caused our universe to exist. And there's fine tuning. The universe has the right shape, the right position, has the right relationship to the sun, right atmospheric conditions. The Earth has the right crust, the moon has the right distance. The string theory does not work, as physicists have yet to produce any empirical evidence for either string theory, loose space theory, or any other. Unified theory. Multiverse theory does not work at stranded states. There is zero evidence for other universes, has no basis in mathematics. It is just a collection of ideas. God is the only person that can bring a finite universe, along with the natural world, into existence from non-existence. There's laws of nature, there's no laws of motion. First law of motion, object at rest stays at rest. An object in motion stays in motion, same speed, same direction, unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. Second law of motion, the time rate of change in momentum of a body is equal in both magnitude and direction to the force imposed on it. Third law of motion, two bodies interact, they apply forces to one another that are equal magnitude, opposite direction. Newton's laws of gravity, every particle attracts at every other particle in the universe with a force that is proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the centers. Aristotle's laws of logic, there's the law of identity. Anything that has been determined to be true must be identical to itself and different from other things. Law of non-contradiction, contradictory propositions cannot be true in the same sense at the same time. Law of the fluid middle states that for every proposition, your disposition is true or the negation is true. Einstein's theory of relativity, general theory of relativity, matter causes space to curve. There's a special theory of relativity. Time is relative. Time depends on reference frame of the observer. If one observer moves at the speed of light, then the time will be slower for him. On the other hand, if the observer moves slower than the speed of light, then the time will pass by faster. John Locke, social contract theory, people of their society in accordance with agreement that established moral political rules of behavior. Since our arrival on Earth, we have had laws that govern human nature and natural elements. While these concepts were described by humans, these natural laws and forces must have been put in place by omnipotent lawmaker. Then there's the God particle. God particle is known as the Higgs boson, a group of particles that sparked cosmic explosion of the Big Bang. Michio Kaku stated, everything we see around us, including the galaxies, stars, planets, us, owes its existence to the Higgs boson. After 40-year search, subatomic particle with the expected properties was discovered in 2012 by the ATLAS CMS experiment at the Large Hadron Collider at CERN near Geneva, Switzerland. New particle was subsequently confirmed to match expected properties. The Higgs boson physicists from 2 to 3 teams, Peter Higgs, Francis Engler, awarded Nobel Prize in Physics in 2013 for their theoretical predictions. As humans take particle systems all the time, such as droplets, their saliva, spit, mucus, viruses, blood, vomit, language, profanity, and music. If God spoke something out of his mouth, what would come out? It would be a God particle. These particles would include space, matter, time, and energy and life. Genesis 1:11, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, trees on the ground, trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to the various kinds. And God said, let there be light, and then there was light. Then we have DNA. DNA is stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA consists of 4 letters, ACGT, 89, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. DNA is the only molecule capable of reproducing itself. DNA is present in all living cells and all living things. DNA cannot emerge spontaneously from inanimate matter. Non-living matter like rocks and water can't produce DNA. There's a scientific hypothesis called the origin hypothesis. Origin will suggest that life on Earth began with simple RNA molecule that would copy itself without producing other molecules. I hardly doubt that RNA hypothesis would pass scientific method. Researchers had tried demonstrating properties of RNA sequences, but it's not enough to prove the RNA world hypothesis. It is possible for self-replicating molecule to be the primary source of living organisms. All living organisms have DNA. Living organs are related to common ancestry. Most traces of a single progenitor. The biochemistry of progenitor is God. While some people say it's a universal common ancestor. Is Genesis scientifically accurate? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In 6 days, rested on the seventh. Scientific translation: God made time, space, and matter. God called the light day and the darkness night. There was evening and there was morning, the first day. Scientific translation: day, evening, night, morning, day. Text describing the rotation of the earth on its axis takes 24 hours. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And there was evening, there was morning, third day. And there was evening, there was morning, the fourth day. And there was evening, there was morning, the fifth day. There was evening, there was morning, the sixth day. Genesis seems to scientifically describe an accurate 624-hour day creation account. Here's biblical cosmology. Time scale 6 days at creation. The order of events are as follows. And there's the Big Bang cosmology. Time scale 9 billion years of cosmic expansion. Order of events are as follows. Both reviews are not compatible. Either the Bible is wrong or the science is wrong. There's the theory of evolution. Evolution is the process of change in all forms of life over generations, and evolutionary biology is a study of how evolution occurs. Biological populations evolve through genetic changes that correspond to changes in the organism's observable traits. Human evolution is the evolutionary process with the history of primates that led to the emergence of Homo sapiens and a distinct species of hominid family, which includes great apes. This process involved the gradual development of traits such as human bipedalism, complex language, as well as interbreeding with other hominids, indicating that human evolution is not linear but web-like. It's theorized that humans and chimps share a common ancestor. The chimpanzee human common ancestor is the last common ancestor shared between chimps and humans. Estimates of the divergent date vary widely from 13 to 5 million years ago. Some biologists say that life descended from a single common ancestor. Their evolution states that there is an origin of life on Earth. Their evolution is trying to prove common descent to complicate human origin Genesis. First theory states, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh. On day 6, God formed the man dust the earth, named him Adam, then he made Eve. And the 6,000 years of reproduction, that's how we got him. Evolutionary theory states all humans see today have descended from a common ancestor, the chimpanzees, that lived in Africa around 10 million years ago. This common ancestor traces lineage back to the universal common ancestor, last seen 4 billion years ago. Both theories cannot be true at the same time in the same respect. With the stake, if evolution is true and natural world only exists, and death is the end for us all, Philippians 1:14. If Jesus Christ has not been raised from the dead, our preaching is useless, and so is our faith. If theistic evolution is true, this means that God used evolution to make us. Evolution, if proven to be true, will disprove Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden, the problem of evil, fall of man, original sin, and every descendant in the bloodline of Adam, including Jesus, and his resurrection. Gospel Luke traces the genealogy of Jesus to Adam, meaning Jesus is a descendant of Adam. If Adam did not exist, that would mean Jesus didn't exist. Christians would worship a false God and would be a false witness about God. Corinthians 1:17. If Jesus Christ has not been raised from the dead, your faith is futile, you are still in your sins, and those that have fallen asleep in Christ are lost. Problems with the evolutionary worldview. Evolution defined as a random, blind, purposeless natural process that doesn't need the divine creator behind it. However, evolution is guided by these examples: mutation, migration, natural selection, and genetic drift. There's DNA, the molecule that carries genetic information from the development of functioning of organisms. Genetic limits: dog breeders can breed no dogs smaller than a Chihuahua or larger than a Great Dane. Richard Linsky has an experiment with E. coli bacteria for 40 years. It's still bacteria. The Drosophila megaloths do fruit fly experiment in July 2019 proved that the flies were adapted. UCA. It is thought to be a single-celled organism that lived between 3 and 4 billion years ago. However, no fossil evidence of UCA exists. No fossil yet has been closely identified as the human chimpanzee common ancestor. Scientific American states that fossil evidence is scarce. Research is not sure what the last common ancestor might have looked like or where it lived. Did humans evolve in a straight line, one species after another, or did it not proceed in a straight line? What is a common ancestor? Who is our common ancestor? Eugene Kuhn, our biology director, wrote that common ancestors of life stated for a century after the publication of Darwin's bold proposition, before the advent of molecular biology, the UCA hypothesis remained an untested, hardly testable speculation. Although tests have later developed and generally considered compelling, they fall short of a rigorous formal test of UCA hypothesis. A formal demonstration of the universal constitutional hypothesis is illusory, has not been achieved. A demonstration is unlikely to be feasible in principle. The common ancestor of humans and chimps has never been found. Every fossil candidate is either an ancestor of humans or chimps. Let's look at the oldest hominid fossils. They have a fossil record. It's the fossil record. Humans, Homo erectus 2 million years ago, Homo habilis 2 million years ago, Homo rudolfensis 2 million years ago, Homo ergaster 1.5 million years ago, Homo antecessor 800,000 years ago, Homo heidelbergensis 5,000 years ago, Homo naledi 335,000 years ago, Homo sapiens 300,000 years ago, Homo floresiensis 50,000 years ago, Homo neanderthalensis 50,000 years ago. Then there's apes, Lessie 13 million years, the Greco 7 million years, Sahel 7 million years, Hardy 4 million years, Leslie 3.5 million years, Kenya 3 million years, Gari 2.5 million years ago, Paranthropus aethiopithecus 2.5 million years ago, Paranthropus robustus 2 million years ago, Paranthropus boise 2 million years ago, and Sediba 1.8 million years ago. This is Darwin's doubt. There's no transition from fossils from humans to apes. There's no common ancestor has been found. Evolution has taken place. We're not saying a change of kind or family. Humans and apes have always been separate linear evolutionary paths. Mutations have been caused by environmental changes. What is a kind? A kind is a group of people or things having similar characteristics. In science, a kind is like a family or group of families. Dog family, wolves, African wild dogs, hyenas, foxes, coyotes, and the domestic dog. Cat family, lions, tigers, pumas, leopards, jaguars, cheetahs, and cats. Horse family, horses, zebras, donkeys, and mules. Bird family, chickens, turkeys, parrots, robins, ostriches, penguins, and owls. Human family are Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo naledi, Homo sapien, ape family are chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, orangutans, and gibbons. This proves evolution between kinds, which is what the Bible teaches. Genesis 1:24. Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds. The livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, wild animals, each according to its kind. Let us make mankind our image, our likeness, so that they may rule the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, over the livestock and the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. Differences between humans and apes. This chart lists the differences between humans and apes. Based on our DNA, humans are related to apes by ancestry. Ancestry takes us back to God. Our anthropology shows that we will not have the same common ancestor. Apes will have their own common ancestor, and the common ancestor of humans will be male and female, Adam and Eve. And there's life, Bible, and science agree that life arose from non-life. Origin of life on Earth is one of the great mysteries of science. Various answers have been proposed, all of which remain unverified. There is the primordial soup theory, but unanimous opinion on how life Earth began has not emerged. Some ideas that life originated on the ground, the atmosphere, the ocean, vents of the sea, comets from outer space. There's spontaneous generation, held that living creatures could arise from non-living matter. The theory was disproved by Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur's 1859 experiment is widely seen as having settled the question of spontaneous generation. He boiled a meat broth in a swan neck flask, the bend in the neck flask preventing falling particles from reaching the broth. Louis Pasteur proved that life comes from life. Biogenesis states that life can only come from pre-existing life. Or other living things, not from non-life. Abiogenesis proposes that the first life forms generated very simply through a gradual process, become increasingly complex. 1952, Stanley Miller and Harold Urey tested the hypothesis they combined water, methane, ammonia, hydrogen, in sealed vials. Miller and Urey bombarded the vials of heat, continuous electrode sparks to simulate volcanic activity and light. Eventually, the reaction produced amino acids, the building blocks of life itself. Life cannot arise from non-life itself. Miller and Urey that proved that someone had to bring life from non-life at the end of the Earth's formation. Since humans and laboratory equipment did not exist, who did? God. God is the more reasonable answer. DNA evidence in all living organisms traces back to a single progenitor a long time ago. There's no fossil evidence for universal common ancestor. That means God is the universal common ancestor of all living organisms. According to Genesis, God made plants, animals, humans from the dust of the earth. God used a process called Genesis to bring life from non-life. Biogenesis is the process of life being produced by pre-existing life forms. Abiogenesis, the process of life being produced by inorganic material using artificial means. Genesis, process of life being produced by inorganic material using supernatural means. There's the tree of life. There's the creationist tree of life, the evolutionist tree of life. This is the tree of life which both agreed by creationist and evolutionists. The creationist tree of life shows the organization of animals within their respective families. The evolutionist tree of life shows how we are all related through genetics. Charles Darwin, buds give rise by growth of flesh buds and leaves a vigorous branch out and overtop on all sides. Hello? Yeah, I'm at home right now. I'm at home right now. Has to be after 1 o'clock, so I got a doctor's appointment. It'll be two, two, 2 o'clock. Okay. Yes. I can't go to the movies today. Okay. Okay. There's Charles Darwin. Buds give rise by growth of fresh buds. These are vigorous branch out over top and all sides. Many favor branch. So by generation, I believe it has been the great tree of life, which fills its dead and broken branches from the crust of the earth, and covers the surface with its ever-branching beautiful ramifications. This is reference to Genesis 2:9. The Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life is a metaphor for God. He is the creator of life and the destroyer of life. However, Jesus is the author of life. It means he can write in the history and he can write you out of history. John 1, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. Is with God in the beginning. To him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him life, that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness has not overcome it. This chromosome Adam, mitochondrial Eve. All men today have a Y chromosome descended from one man identified as Y chromosome Adam. All mitochondrial genomes today should be traceable to a single woman named mitochondrial Eve. Joshua Swamidass, author of The Genealogical Adam and Eve, presents a case for theistic evolution that remains true to a literal Adam and Eve created as of recently 6,000 years ago. His hypothesis is stated below. They lived recently in the Middle East, perhaps as recently 6,000 years ago. Their genealogical ancestors of everyone by 1 AD. Adam and Eve are a couple of whom all human beings in living descend. God created Adam and Eve as a special act of creation. Humanity also existed outside the Garden of Eden, created through evolution. But God states Adam and Eve first as a specially created couple. These are findings by Dr. Swamidass, but now clearing up some big scientific understandings. We know that all four of these things can be true at the same time. Swamidass said, even if Adam and Eve lived recently 6,000 years ago, they would be the genealogical ancestors of everyone and crossed the globe by 1 AD. They could have been even created de novo from the dust of the rib. Of course, at the same time, dust of sin from people outside the garden, others whom God created by a providentially governed process of evolution. The historical evidence. Here's Adam and Eve. Joshua Swamidass, author of Genealogical Adam and Eve, has shown that by 1 AD, all humans then living descended from a couple lived at least 6,000 years ago. Based on ancient artifacts, writings, Mesopotamia's oldest human civilization, the region is between the Tigris and Euphrates. Mesopotamia is noted for advancements in literacy, astronomy, agriculture, mathematics, law, and agriculture. Mesopotamia was also one of the world's first urban cities, including Babylon, Ashur-Akkad. Mesopotamian society is thought to have origins around 6,000 years ago, 4,000 BC. It had Juanas, the world's first author, and is credited with creating early forms of poetry and literature. According to genealogy, according to the Bible, Adam and Eve were created in the Garden of Eden, which takes place between the four rivers, Fishon, Gihon, Tigris, Euphrates rivers, probably in the Mesopotamian region around the year 4000 BC. The archaeological scientific data seems to match the biblical records. Adam and Eve in ancient history. If Adam and Eve existed, then their story should be well documented in ancient history. Ancient history is vastly different from modern history. Modern history focuses on the key events, ideas, movements, developments, and people that have shaped the modern world. Today, people are all about the facts, the evidence, and the details. Ancient history focuses on the nature of the evidence of the ancient world, the key features and developments of ancient societies. Ancient history is more concerned about the truthfulness of the story. To establish Adam and Eve historical figures, we need to see if the ancient world has similar stories that can be compared to elements of Adam and Eve, such as original couple or fall of man stories. There's original couple stories. There's Buku and Mumbai, 3rd century AD, Wamba and Sela, 18th century AD, Ashkan and Bella, 13th century AD. God created the first man, Adam, then created the first woman, Eve. God put Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden to care and nurture the land. Ancient history follows the same formula. The deity creates two people in sacred land, blesses the couple with prosperity, like eternal life, and large families. These elements seem to establish the recipe of Adam and Eve. The Adam and Eve story may have served as an inspiration for these later accounts. The Fall of Man stories, Pandora's Box, Inspiration story, the Epic Origin story, Blackfeet Indian story. Adam and Eve Fall of Man story. After Adam and Eve were made, Eve was lured to the tree by knowledge of good and evil. After being tempted by Satan, Eve, along with Adam, ate from the forbidden tree. God's orders were defied, therefore God placed a curse on Adam and Eve along with the rest of humanity. Ancient history follows the same formula of the deity, bringing a special couple. The female is usually the one that defied the Creator's orders. The Creator then unleashes fear, evil, and death on humanity. There's Noah's Flood. Noah's Flood scientific facts. Ron Neller holds a bachelor's degree and a PhD in fluvial geomorphology, studies the relation of floods, which focuses on the dramatic hydrodynamic forces that shape rivers. Ron came to the belief in the global flood long before he became a Christian. These are scientific facts. 70% of Earth's surface is covered by sedimentary rock. There's underfed rivers, water gaps. 40% of Earth's land surface is covered by plateaus. The absence of bioturbation and rock layers. Fossils are not from local floods. There's not enough sediment produced to create the large regional fossils beds that we see. Noah's Flood in ancient history. Noah's Flood did not happen. It should be well documented in ancient history. To establish the recipe of Noah's Flood in other cultures, let's have similar plot details compared to Noah. Remember, ancient history is more concerned about the proof of the story, not the exact detail. There's flood stories similar to Noah, Wayne Bozu, the Great Flood, Akkadian flood story, Aztec flood story, Greek flood story, Epic of Gilgamesh, Hawaiian flood story, the Chinese flood. If Noah's flood happened, what would we expect? We should expect biblical data to match reality. There's Genesis 6:14 through 16. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high, or 440 times 72 times 43 feet. This is the equivalent to a boat built 1.5 football fields in length, 24 yards wide, 14 yards in height. The ark would look something like this. That is the Ark Covenant in Kentucky, which is owned by Ken Ham. He came all the way from Australia to Kentucky to show people the evidence of Noah's Ark and his love for God. Genesis 8:4, on the 17th day of the 17th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The Therapeutic site is 18 miles south of Mount Ararat, shows a boat-shaped land formation. The site measures 538 feet and length close to 300 cubits mentioned in Genesis. 3D scans show the likelihood of land formation being the resting place of Noah's Ark. Genesis 7:19, all high mountains under the whole sky were covered. It is true that remnants of ancient sea life have been found fossilized on Everest. These include trilobites, ostracods, crinoids, shells, pebble marine fossils, also found the Himalayas. Himalayas and Mount Everest are tallest mountains in the world. Pangea is ripped apart by the flood. Just as one line. Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place. Let dry ground appear. This can be seen as a reference to the supercontinent Pangea. Genesis 6:1, in the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day all springs, the great deep burst forth. This could be a reference to the hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor and geysers found on landforms. There's the Bromo Tindar Semeru National Park in Indonesia, Sunset Great Arizona, Hicks Dome, Illinois, Ring of Fire, Pacific Ocean, world map after breakup Pangea. Before the flood of Pangea, a supercontinent where all continents didn't join. Catastrophic earthquakes caused seafloor spreading on the ocean floor, seafloor spreading causing ocean vents to raise sea levels, which flooded rivers. Overflowing rivers created a series of regional floods. Earthquakes on land caused avalanches of mountains, which formed like glacial valleys. Ice glaciers around geyser volcanic activity melted due to the heat. This resulted in major flooding of valleys between mountains. At one point in time, glaciers covered 30% of the Earth's land area. That'd be a lot of water. Those glaciers melted all at once. They God sent rain upon the Earth for 40 days, which melted glaciers. Melting glaciers, overflowing rivers and valleys, along with 40 days of rain led the global flood Noah. Drifting continents led to Pangea breaking apart. The flood caused major changes in Earth's landscapes. The Big Lake theory identified the Grand Canyon once boasted an ancient lake. The lake was washed out the rest of those flood, creating a water gap. Ocean ripples in Montana, ocean ripples along the Cheetah Basin in Russia, ocean ripples along the Columbia River in North America, dried riverbed in Mesopotamia, Lake Missoula, Montana, chain of Scavengers, Washington, Lake Bonneville, Utah. And things like these landforms have been affected by a series of major floods or global catastrophe. Canyons and deserts seem to have been formed by water-related events. Grand Canyons in Arizona used to be an ancient lake burned by brachiopod fossils found at the bottom of the canyon. Bryce Canyon, Utah, caused by ice wedging, the water freezes and expands. The expansion is known as ice wedging. Rock starts to break apart in the walls into windows and fully formed column as water continues to melt and refreeze the re-enter cracks. River Fishing Canyon after was caused by fractured earth's crust, resulting in the collapse of the valley, forming a broad running north and south. Southward moving, glaciers deepened, with more fault and erosion adding to the effect. After ice sheet disappeared, the northern Sahara Desert after dried out. The Suna monsoon came farther north to counteract the dry conditions in the southern Sahara. Around 2500 BC, the monsoon retreated south and caused Sahara to become a desert. Research shows that standing water may exist in the heart of the desert, which in Chile, scientists recently discovered remnants of the freshwater plant and was buried in the sediment of the desert's salt flats. The Mujer Desert in California was covered by shallow seas, as evidenced by fossil marine creatures in limestone dolomite. Egyptian pyramids built after the flood. Many of Egypt's famous monuments, such as the Sphinx, Cheops Pyramid, Giza, contain hundreds of thousands of fossils. Fossil discoveries that area where Pyramid Sphinx is at once submerged underwater. Noah's flood happened near 30,000 BC. Egyptian pyramids were built around the year 2500 BC. And the population of Egypt was in 2500 BC was 1.6 million people. 8 people survived Noah's flood. If you start off with 8 people at a growth rate 3.2% over a period of 500 years, there should be around 1.6 million people to build the pyramids of the Tower of Babel. And there's Moses. The first piece of evidence comes from a quote from Manetho on the existence of Moses. Also reported that the priest who ordained their polity and their laws was the birth of Helipos. His name is Sarsif from Osiris, who was the god of Helipos. But that when he was gone over these people, his name was changed. He was called Moses. Second piece of evidence comes from Exodus 19:13, about a God appearing to Moses on Mount Sinai. On the morning of the third day, thunder roared and lightning flashed. A dense cloud came down the mountain. There's a long, loud blast from a ram's horn, had all the people tremble. Moses then led them out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. All of Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord had descended in the form of fire. Their piece of evidence comes from the books of Isaiah, and when Moses splits the rock in half. Exodus 17:6. God says to Moses, "Behold, I will stand before you. I stand before you there on the rock of Horeb. You shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that people may drink." Isaiah 40:21. He made the water flow out of the rock for them. He split the rock, and water gushed forth. Jabal Machlah is recognized by a distinct blackened peak, which some may say the evidence of God descending on Mount Sinai in the form of fire. Jabal Machlah in English means burnt mountain. The giant split rock, the rock at Rephidim, is found in northwest of Jabal Machlah. This is the rock that God commanded Moses to strike with his staff. Artifact depicts a man in a chariot with two horses harnessed to it. Artifact and features same and coming out of the clouds, pulling the person into heaven. An ivory box contains describing scenes from the Old Testament. There's the Exodus. Beneath the stele, chieftains lie prostrate, saying peace. Not one lifts his head among the nine bows. Leba is captured while Haiti is pacified. Canaan is plundered. Ashkelon is carried off. Gezer is captured. Edom is made into non-existence. Israel is wasted, but its seed is not. Peru has become a widow because of Egypt. All lands unite themselves in peace. Those who went about subdued by the king of Upper and Lower Egypt. Corroborates Genesis 41:3. The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end. The 7 years of famine began. Just as Joseph said, there was a famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all that Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. The Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, do what he tells them." There's the Communitep second campaign. A group of Asiatic foreigners labored as Hyksos, visiting the Egyptian official Communitep. Israel is part of Western Asia. Corroborates the oppression of Israelite story in Exodus, Exodus 1:1. These are names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family: Reuben, Simon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Rectangular tomb painting is showing a brick-making building, process featuring Asiatics from the actual period of Israelite bondage. Corroborates Exodus 1:1-4. So they put slave masters over them to oppress them and force labor. They built Pithom and Ramses as storage cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread, as the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter in harsh labor, brick and mortar, with all kinds of work in the fields. And all the harsh labor, Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. Brooklyn Thieves with hires to document the change of Asiatic names like Aquoba, Ashra, Haya, were Zeptu, and Zakir. As for Israel was devastated by famine, Jacob's family members went into Egypt. After the death of Joseph, a new pharaoh was appointed where he enslaved foreigners. Forced them to do hard labor like brick making, the pharaoh then orders the slaughter of all male children. Moses survives and becomes adopted by the Egyptians. Oppression of slaves in Egypt. Egyptian Empire, map of Egyptian during the 1450s showing the city of Avaris, land of Canaan. The Ars inscription. It is a legendary text concerning the gods of Shu, god of air and sunlight, and his son Geb, the god of earth. This might have a connection to Moses and the god of the Bible. Osiris is the god of fertility, agriculture, afterlife and the dead, resurrection, life, and vegetation, ancient Egyptian religion. Manetho confirms that Sarv was the tyrannical high priest of Osiris. Osiris became the son of Osiris, in other words, the son of God. Slave inscriptions. The Semitic inscriptions were written by Asiatic slaves who worked in the mines. One inscription reads El, one of the Hebrew names of God. An Israelite wrote his inscription as using alphabetic style handwriting, while Egyptians use hieroglyphics as their form of handwriting. The Kadesh inscription, incarnately showing Sashu spies being beaten by Egyptians. This could be seen as a reference to 12 spies sent by Moses. Book of Numbers, the spies saw fortified cities, resident giants, which frightened them and led them to believe that the Israelites would not be able to conquer the land as God had promised. Canaan was a tributary to the Egyptian during the years 1500 BC. Manetho records that the Pharaoh of Memphis cleansed Egypt of lepers and other polluted people, putting them to work in the stone quarries, then confining them to the large. There Sarsa became the leader and ordered them to give up worship of the gods. The Sarsaphites invited the Hyksos back to Egypt. Together, their new allies drove Amenophis and his son Ramses to exile. Nubia instituted a 13-year reign of religious oppression. Towns and temples were devastated. The imagination of gods destroyed. The sanctuaries turned to kitchens. Sacred animals roasted over fires. The story of Sarsa matches the story we're given in Exodus. The Israelites came to Egypt after famine their homeland. The Israelites started out as indentured servants until a new pharaoh was appointed, where he enslaved foreigners and forced them to do hard labor like brickmen. When Moses was older, he killed the Egyptian because he was beating a Hebrew slave. Moses met God at a burning bush. God told Moses he was going to harden the Pharaoh's heart and send numerous plagues on the nation of Egypt. And there's the plagues of Egypt. There's the tempest stuff. This great God desired his majesty, while gods complained that they're discontent. Then the gods caused that sky to become the tempest of rain. With darkness in the condition of the west, the sky began storm without cessation, louder than the cries of masses, more powerful than while the rain howled, the mountains louder. Then the sound of the underground source, the Nile is elephantine. In every house, every quarter that reached their corpses floating on the water like skiffs or papyrus outside the palace audience. Chamber appeared in days when no torch could be lit in 2 lamps. His majesty did, how much greater is this than the wrath of the great God? Corroborates Exodus 9:22. The Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand towards the sky so that hail will fall over Egypt, on people, animals, and everything growing in the fields of Egypt. And Moses stretched out his staff toward the sky. The Lord sent thunder and hail. The lightning flashed down to the ground. So the Lord rained hail in the land of Egypt. Hail fell, lightning flashed, and back and forth. It was the worst storm in all the land of Egypt had become a nation. Throughout Egypt, hail struck everything in the fields, both people and animals. It beat down everything growing in the fields and chipped every tree. There's the purifiers. Indeed, hearts are violent, pestilence is throughout the land, blood is everywhere, death is not lacking. The mummy cloth speaks even before one comes near. Indeed, many dead are buried in the river, the stream is a sepulchre. In the place, embalming has become a stream. Indeed, noblemen are in distress, while the poor man is full of joy. Every town says, let us suppress the power among us. Indeed, the river is blood, yet men drink of it, men shrink from human beings and thirst after water. Proverbs Exodus 7:19. Lord said to Moses, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the strange canals, over the ponds of the reservoirs, they would turn to blood. There's the Brooklyn Medical Papyrus, beginning of the collection of remedies to drive out the poison of all snakes, all scorpions, tarantulas, serpents. and handed her a priest circlet and drive all the snakes and distill their mouths. Corroborates Numbers 21:6. The Lord sent venomous snakes among them. They bit the people, and many Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said, "We sinned, we spoke against the Lord, against you. Pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us." So Moses prayed for the people. The Lord said to Moses, "Make a snake and put it up on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live." So Moses made a bronze snake and put it up on a pole. Then when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived. The ancient Egyptians were aware of both snakes' usefulness in controlling vermin, dangerous poison. Its poison. Snake deities were worshipped in hopes of preventing potential attack by their earthly representatives. The plagues are turning water to blood, frogs, flies, livestock, pestilence, blood, hail, locust, darkness, killing your firstborn children. Death, the firstborn child, Exodus 11:5. Every firstborn son in Egypt will die. The firstborn son of the Pharaoh who sits on the throne. Amun Khephersheth was the first son of Pharaoh Ramses II, Queen Nefertari. Amun Khephersheth died around the year 25 of his father's reign. Here's the plague of flies, Exodus 8:21. If you do not let my people go, I will send the form of flies on you, your officials, on your people, and your houses. The house of the Egyptians will be full of flies, even the ground is covered with. Black Death was a plague that occurred in Europe, 1346 and 1353, one of the most fatal pandemics in history. As many as 50 million people perished. Black Death was caused by spread of flies, as the plague of flies in Exodus. Water turned to blood. Both Exodus and Purifiers agree that the Nile River turned to blood. Russia has a similar story, but the Dalton River has been regularly polluted by nickel industry. As a result, the river's water has turned red. Plague of darkness and hail. Both tempests still and Exodus mention a storm that damaged Egypt. Exodus tempest still could be described in characteristics of Minoan eruption. The Minoan eruption was a catastrophic volcanic eruption that devastated the ancient island of Thera. It destroyed Minoan settlement at Kratari, as well as communities and agricultural areas on nearby islands, the coast of Crete, earthquakes and tsunamis. Plague of livestock pestilence. Exodus 19:3. Exodus 9:3. Then the Lord will bring a terrible plague on your livestock in the field, on your horses, donkeys, and camels, and on your cattle, sheep, and goats. Exodus 12:12. On that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn, both people and animals. I will bring judgment on the gods of Egypt. Lake Niles resembles a similar plague element, such as blood-covered reservoir, death of livestock and people. On August 21st, 1986, a lyric eruption at Lake Neos in northwestern Cameroon, after when the lake sat in the crater of a dormant volcano. We had a massive cloud of cool carbon dioxide gas that suddenly raced down to the mountains, killing almost everything below. 1,746 people, 3,500 birds, 3,952 cows, 550 goats, 337 sheep were killed. 4,424 camps were displaced. Then there's Avaris. Pottery found at the Avaris archaeological dig site. Santorini wall paintings discovered both Greece and Egypt. Pumice from the Minoan eruption found in Egypt. 3D image of fault lines that connect the Avaris, Egypt, and Santorini, Greece. These events in Exodus match the Egyptian record. Avaris site where Exodus occurred. The Avaris version as Ramses in Exodus. The Santorini wall painting showed that Egypt established contact with Greece. The pumice in Egypt connects the plagues to Minoan eruption in Santorini. The Minoan eruption can explain many of the plagues. 12 plagues occurred because of volcanic activity. The plague of darkness was caused by stormy winds. They blew pumice and molten ash in the southwest direction of Egypt was located. The Nile River turned when the red volcanic ash carrying the mineral cinnabar from the Aegean Sea, the Nile, creating a color that looks like blood. After the eruption of hordes of locusts invaded Egypt along other ragtime activity. And the corruption of Santorini was responsible for killing the livestock of people in Egypt during the festival of unleavened bread. Crossing the Red Sea, there's the gravestone Maya scene. Gravestone shows a man on a chariot, shooting someone with a staff. The man on the staff appears to be controlling weather elements surrounding him. The swirls above and below him resemble the ocean waves being part of the beginning of the stele, and then being lowered by a man on the chariot at the end of the stele. Corroborates crossing the Red Sea story in Exodus. The Lord hardened the heart of the Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He pursued the children of Israel. When the Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes. Behold, the Egyptians marched after them. So they were afraid. The children of Israel cried out to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, lift your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. The children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. I will indeed harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. So I will gain honor over the Pharaoh and all his army, his chariots, and his horsemen. The Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians, and the chariots and their horsemen. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea waters, and returned to cover the chariots. The horsemen, all the army of the Pharaoh, came to the sea after them. Not so much as one of them remained. Mediterranean Sea, El Bala Lake, Yam Suf, map showing Exodus route, 3D image showing part of the sea. The Red Sea can be translated as Sea of Reed. Before the Suez Canal was built, El Bala Lake and Yam Suf were connected to the Mediterranean Sea. Exodus mentioned that God sent a gust of wind that separated the waters. 63 miles per hour winds from the east could have pushed the water back. If the water pushed back the waterways, a land bridge could have opened, enabling people to walk across exposed mudflats to safety. As soon as the wind died down, the water could rush back in. The studies based on reconstruction of the likely locations and depths of the delta waterways, which have shifted considerably over time. After the plagues, Moses and the Israelites fled to Egypt to pursue the Promised Land. The Pharaoh's army chased Moses to the Red Sea, or sometimes translated Sea of Reeds. He took out his staff and parted the sea in half. Once the Israelites crossed the sea, Moses used the staff to turn the sea back to normal. The waters drowned the Egyptian army, leaving not much remained behind. Jonah the whale story. Jonah was a disobedient prophet who attempted to flee from God. Jonah was swallowed by a huge fish for 3 days, repents, and finally obeys God's command to preach the city of Nineveh. Real life example. 1981, a sailor named James Bartley was swallowed whole by a sperm whale. He was found living days later in the stomach of the whale. On June 11, 2021, a lobster named Michael Packard was briefly swallowed by a humpback whale off the coast of Provincetown, Massachusetts. He survived with only dislocated knee and soft tissue damage. Archaeologists uncovered 2,700-year-old intricate rock carvings in ancient Nineveh. Nineveh was an ancient Assyrian city of Upper Mesopotamia, located on the outskirts of Muslim modern-day northern Iraq. King David. David was a Jewish monarch of ancient Israel and the third king of Israel. David ascended the throne as the king of Judah in 85 BCE. The tale then tells a fragmentary stele containing a Canaanite inscription which dates to the 19th century BCE. It is notable for possibly being the most significant, perhaps the only extra-biblical archaeological reference, House of David, telling those date to 850 BC, and corroborates House of David family line documented in the books of Samuel and Kings. Joshua's altar, Mount Ebal site discovered Israelite archaeologist Adam Zertel during the Manasseh Hill County survey in 1980. Zertel, who later excavated the site for reasons suggests to identify as Joshua's altar, featured in the book of Joshua of the Old Testament. Many archaeologists agree that the structure was a site on early Israelite cult activity, however, its identified with Joshua's altar is disputed. According to the book of Joshua chapter 8, the Israelites under the leadership of Joshua had built an altar of Mount Ebal, as had been instructed earlier by Moses. The altar of Mount Ebal seems to corroborate the location revealed in the book of Joshua. A small floating tablet was discovered in 2019 on Mount Ebal near biblical Shechem. A pile of discarded dirt debris from excavations carried out in the 1980s. Mount Ebal is known from Deuteronomy 11:29 as a place of curses. The debris pile was from an area believed by some archaeologists to be an altar. The archaeologists led by Dr. Scott Stripling of the Bible Seminary in Texas believe the 0.8 tablet proves that Israelites were literate. They entered the Holy Land, therefore could have written the Bible some events took place. They also claim the tablets hold the earliest known writing of Yahweh or the divine name of God. There's the age of the earth. History Channel, Byju's, Life Science, Joshua Swamidos, and The Guardian on agreement the biblical account human history originated in Mesopotamia. The age of the earth is around 6,000 years old. Known as creationism, Irenaeus thought that each day of the 6 days of creation was 1,000 years, meaning on his view that Earth would be roughly 12,000 years. There were about approximately 2,000 years between Abraham and Adam, 1,000 years between Abraham and Jesus, and 1,000 years between Jesus and our time. This formed the younger creationist belief that the age of the Earth is 6,000 to 1,000 years old. Let's see if there are scientific historical findings that can confirm the belief. Scientific findings on Earth. The amount of helium, a product of applicated radioactive elements, containing zircons, granite is consistent with an age around 6,000 years. Carbon-14 has a life of about 5,730 years. Carbon-14 in oil suggests thousands of years and clearly contradicts ages of millions of years. Carbon-14 in an oil again suggests that thousands of years, not millions of years. Carbon-14 in fossilized wood also indicates that ages of thousands of years, not millions of years. Carbon-14 in diamonds suggests that ages of thousands of years, not billions of years. In 2016, a team of scientists reported that covered the genome from a 4,500-year-old human skeleton in Ethiopia. First time a complete assemblage of DNA has been retrieved from ancient human in Africa. The last woolly mammoths roamed the Earth recently as 4,000 years ago on a remote island in the Arctic Ocean. Due to DNA being retrieved in ancient African humans, researchers conclude that the people in the East spread into Africa 3,000 years ago. In later generations, your DNA ended up scattered across the continent. This challenges the 150,000 years proposed by Africa theory. The study extracted the leg bones of extinct moa birds in New Zealand, found that half-life of DNA is 521 years, finding that the pliable blood vessels, blood cells, animal proteins, and DNA in dinosaurs were consistent age of thousands of years from fossils, not the 65 million years claimed by paleontologists. T-Rex fossil discovered with blood cell 1990s. Diamonds discovered carbon-14, a skeleton found in Moda Cave in Ethiopia using the complete assembled DNA. If the out of Africa theory happened 4,500 years ago, in the year 2500 BC, this would confirm the collapse of the Tower of Babel. These are historic findings of the young Earth. Year 1000, the creation of Adam, Mesopotamia comes the first urban literate civilization, Scorpion's tomb hieroglyphics, the Egyptian hieroglyphic board, armor palette, beard payslip, Egyptian Sumerian gorge was written, Margaret cave painting, Lost Gal cave painting, Noah's flood. Year 2000, seal of Seth Persephone, Kesh Temple Hymn, Tower of Babel, Egyptian pyramids built, reforms of Ur-Kagina, Epic of Gilgamesh written, Mammoth's last scene. Then there's the birth of Abraham, the birth of Joseph, Shang Dynasty of Oracle bones. Hinduism begins at Indus Valley. Moses of the Exodus, reign of King David. Monarchy divides, Assyrian destruction of Israel. Babylon, captivity of Judah, birth of Buddha, and the birth of Jesus. Crucifixion of Jesus, siege of Jerusalem, eruption of Mount Vesuvius, the birth of Muhammad, then the Crusades. In the year 6000, Christopher Columbus discovers Bahamas, Mayflower Compact, first dinosaur bone discovered, American Revolutionary War, Charles Darwin theory of evolution, American Civil War, first hominid fossil found, radiometric dating invented, World War One, the Big Bang Theory proposed, World War II, Apollo 11, and 2023 to present as modern society. The Olaf theory fails the historic 4.3 billion years ago. Last appearance of universal common ancestor, no fossil evidence exists. 3.7 billion years ago, first life forms on Earth, a unanimous origin of life method has not been verified. 100 years ago, the first appearance of dinosaurs, origin of dinosaurs has not yet been explained. 65 years ago, dinosaurs go extinct. No conclusive answer to the mystery of the extinction of dinosaurs. Finding blood cells, and animal proteins, even DNA, dinosaur bones challenges 65 million year extinction event. According to some reports, we dinosaurs might have survived the extinction event. 10 million years ago, the last appearance of human chimpanzee common ancestor, there was no fossil evidence of a human chimpanzee common ancestor. 5 million years ago, human chimpanzee split. Flora Graham of Nature.com states there is no single birthplace of humans. Humanity did not emerge from a single region of Africa or from intermingling populations around the continent. Candidates considered to be the birthplace of human civilization are Mesopotamia, Australia, Egypt, and Africa. 150,000 years ago, out of African movement, DNA being retrieved in ancient African humans challenges the 150,000 years proposed by Africa theory. Researchers conclude that people from the Near East spread into Africa 50,000 years ago. In later generations, the DNA ended up scattered across the continent. Although the theory seems to be challenged not only scientifically, but also historically. Dinos, dragons, unicorns, oh my. Job 40:15. Look at behemoth which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. What strength it has in its loins, what power and muscles of the belly. Its tail sways like a cedar. The sinews of its thighs are close knit. Its bones are tubes of bronze. Its limbs are like rods of iron. Its ranks first among the works of God. Its maker can approach it with its sword. The hills bring it their produce, and the wild animals play nearby. On the lotus plants it lies, the hidden among the reeds in the marsh. The lotuses conceal it in their shadow. The poplars by the stream around it. A raging river does not alarm it. It is secure. Though the Jordan should it surge against its mouth. Can anyone capture it by the eyes or crack it pierce its nose? Isaiah 27:1. In that day the Lord will punish us with the sword, his fierce, great, powerful sword, Leviathan, the gliding serpent, Leviathan, the coiling serpent, will slay the monster of the sea. I, the Lord, watch over it. I water it continually. I guard day and night so that no one may harm it. I am not aimed. Loch Ness monster is often described as large, long-necked with one or more humps protruding from the water. This could be the serpent described in Isaiah, Numbers 23:22. God brought them out of Egypt. He hath it for the strength of unicorn. There was fossil evidence for Siberian Scottish unicorn. Job 40-15 could be a reference to a T-Rex dinosaur. Revelation 12:3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. There is fossil evidence for the Chinese and Argentinian dragon, also discovered by paleontologists. Pictures above show what they could have looked like. There's Old Testament archaeology part 1. There's the tomb of the patriarchs. Tomb of the patriarchs host Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah. They're all buried there. The only patriarch who is missing is Rachel, who was buried near Bethlehem, where she died in childbirth. And there's the grave of Rebecca. Rebecca is buried in a cave of Machpelah near Mamre in the land of Canaan. Colorful paintings of daily life in Egypt have been discovered dating back more than 4,300 years. The tomb known as Mastaba, found in the pyramid of Necrus Dasher and 25 miles of Cairo during the Egyptian journey. Archaeological mission. Dasher is the southernmost of the Great Pyramid necropolises of the Old Kingdom city in the capital Memphis. Main attractions are two large pyramids of King Snefru, so-called Pyramid and the Red Pyramid. Confirms the killing of the firstborn story in Exodus 12:12. For I will go throughout the land of Egypt on that night, fatally strike all firstborn land of Egypt, from the firstborn to animals, against all the gods of Egypt. I will execute judgments. I am Yahweh. Tombs in the valley of Hinnom, location of Tophet, just outside the city of ancient Jerusalem, where Moloch rituals were performed according to the Book of Kings. Plutarch says that practice for Stop Magellan, Tyrus Syracuse after his victory over the Carthaginians over 180 BC. There's Old Testament archaeology part 2. Research in Italy found a red lipstick they discovered is around 500 years old. There's the ruins of 3,400-year-old lost city. They've been unearthed in Iraq, extreme drought depleting the water levels. The Iraqi ancient city located in the Kurdistan region, a site known as Kamun. And there's Jericho, is famous for its walls, which are 13 feet high, with watchtowers rising 28 feet. The first use of wall for military defense in history. There's the 4,000-year-old Egyptian tomb belonging to the prominent governor's only daughter, Idi. The site dates to Egypt's Middle Kingdom, a period that stretched from around 2030 to 650 BC. Lot's life was a biblical character, disobedient woman who turned a pillar of salt, but looking back to see the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, as she and her family were fleeing. In the Abrahamic religions, Sodom and Gomorrah were cities destroyed by God for their wicked. Old Testament archaeology part 3. In monotheistic belief systems, God is usually viewed as supreme being, creator, and principal object of faith. In polytheistic belief systems, a God is a spirit or being believed had been created or controlling some part of the universe or life which deities often worship. Jehovah is a form of the Hebrew name of God. Using its own translation of the Bible, Jehovah represents God's Father personality. God shows those that are faithful to him. Yahweh, name for God of the Israelites, Yahweh represents the divine warlord personality of God. God will bring a final judgment on humanity at the end of times. There's Israel, God's chosen people, descendants of Jacob, as well as the geographical region God grants to his chosen people. Then there's Jesus. Was Jesus born to a virgin named Mary? The Gospel of Luke, Matthew, and the Quran both agree. Luke 26, do not be afraid, Mary, you have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son. You are to call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever, and his kingdom will never end. How will this be? Mary asked the angel. Hence I am a virgin. The angel answered, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Matthew 23, behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son. They shall call his name Emmanuel. Surah 66:12. Jesus was born when the Spirit of God breathed upon Mary, whose body was chaste. Both the Bible and the Quran agree Jesus was born of a virgin named Mary. and a virgin birth happened naturally, yes, but under these two circumstances, there's parthenogenesis and an asexual reproduction, which a female can produce an embryo without fertilizing an egg sperm. It occurs naturally in some jawed vertebrates, such as the whiptail lizard. And fertilization, procedure that involves retrieving a woman's eggs and man's sperm sample and combining the two in the laboratory dish. A fertilized embryo is transferred to a woman's uterus. Birth of Jesus according to Matthew. According to the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus was born in Bethlehem during the time of King Herod. After the birth of Jesus, Mary and Joseph fled to Egypt after learning that Herod was planning to slaughter children in Bethlehem that were under 2 years of age. Historian Celsus agrees with the flight to Egypt story, but denies both the virgin birth and slaughter of the children story. Celsus states Jesus was a sorcerer. His mother Mary was an adulterous woman who had conceived her husband Joseph by conceived her child by a Roman soldier called Panthera. He invented his birth from a virgin. His mother was a poor woman of the country who was thrown out of her home by a husband, a carpenter by trade, because he was convicted of adultery. After being driven away by her husband and wandering about for a time, she disgracefully gave birth to Jesus, an illegitimate child, who, having hired himself out of a servant of Egypt, accounted Potiphar. Having acquired there some magical powers on which by Egyptians pride themselves, returned to his own country, where his sorcery won him a great following, by which it means to proclaim himself a god. Celsus no problem admitting that Jesus was a real person, but he challenged to claim that he was divine. Historian Macrobius can account for the slaughter of the children. On hearing that the son of Herod, king of Jews, had been slain, Herod ordered all the boys in Syria under the age of 2 to be killed. Augustus said, "It is better be Herod's pig than his son." Josephus notes that when Herod became king, he eliminated his predecessors. Matthias, antagonist, was executed along with 45 members of the antagonist party in 37 BC. John Hyrcanus was strangled over a plot to overthrow Herod in 30 BC. King Herod executed his wives, Marie and Alexandra, along with his sons Antipater, Alexander, and Aristobulus. Herod seems like a person that would carry out such an event. There's the birth of Jesus according to Luke. The Gospel of Luke that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Luke states that after Jesus was born, he returned to Nazareth. Luke does not mention anything about the flight to Egypt. Luke states that Jesus was born during the census of Quirinius, and Quirinius was governor of Syria. The Roman Empire has had a history of conducting a census from time to time. Josephus mentions a census taking place 6 AD. Now Cyrenius, a Roman senator, one who had gone through other magistrates and passed them till he had been consul, and one other council was a great dignity. Came at a time to Syria, with a few others being sent by Caesar to be a judge of that nation, and to take an account of their subjects. Rusticus describes several censuses taken by Caesar Augustus. As a consul for the 5th time, note by order of people, and Senate I increased the number of partitions. 3 times I revised the role of Senate. In my 6th consulship with Marcus Agrippa as my colleague, I made census of the people. I performed the lustrum after interval of 41 years. This is illustration of the 4 million Roman citizens which were entered on the census roll. A 2nd time in the consulship of Gaius Censurus and Gaius Sinus. I again performed the lustrum alone with the Consul Imperium. This lustrum for 4 million Roman citizens were entered on the census roll. A 3rd time on the Consul Imperium by son Tiberius Caesar. As my colleague, I performed the lustrum in the consulship of Sextus Pompeius, Sextus Apuleius. This lustrum, 4 million Roman citizens were entered on the census roll. And there's a scene depicting a Roman census on the plaque from the altar of Demetrius and Navarrus, dating to the late 2nd century BC. There's the Ostracon from Elephantine, or census Cyrus of Paphos is paid as head tax in the 5th year of Emperor Tiberius. There's the Rusticus description that documents acts of Caesar Augustus. There's the tombstone of Aemilius Secundus, one of the agents who conducted the Quirinius census. The inscription names P. Sulpicus, Quirinius as Doomfare, and then below is a table what supposes has been a major instance of registration under Augustus. On Jesus' birthday, did Quirinius and Herod rule them at the same time with different points in time? So obviously Herod died in 4 BC. Quirinius became governor of Syria in 6 AD after Herod Archelaus was deposed. According to the will of King Herod, divided him into 3 parts with Rome's approval, gave 1 part to 3 of his sons. Archelaus given Judah, Samaria, and Idumea to rule on behalf of the Roman Empire. Northern Israel, including Galilee and Perea, was ruled by Herod Antipas, while Herod Philip ruled over Atura, Trachonitis, and other areas. Rome most likely approved Herod's will by conducting a census with Quirinius being the man to take charge. Here's what we do know about Quirinius. 15 BC, Augustus appointed him as governor with the rank of consul of province of Great Cyrenia. In 12 BC, and named consul. Around 500 BC, probably as a legate of Galatia, he had led a campaign to the Harmonides. He left Rome on January 29, 1 BC. In the imperial legate slot in BC 180, Luke is on his narrative, then Quirinius was probably governor of Syria around the year 3000 BC to year 1 BC. He turned as governor in 6 AD. Phlegon stayed in Olympia 1202. An earthquake in Bithynia toppled many buildings in the cave. Olympia 202, translated April 33 AD. Since Jesus lived 33.5 years, this makes the birth date around October 2 BC, along with Roman census. Herod died in 1 BC. Filmer stated that Herod reigned 39 BC to 1 BC. Josephus stated that Herod's death was preceded by first a Jewish fast, then a lunar eclipse, both at 1 BC followed by Passover in 1 AD. This inscription from tombstone discovered near Tripoli, Italy. Its owner was once twice legate of Augustus in Syria. This is a list of Roman legates in Syria. The legate that governed Syria in 4 BC and 1 AD is unknown. Census of Quirinius, Luke 2:1. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that census should be taken of the entire Roman world, and everyone went to their own town to register. That census required people to register at their ancestral homes. There have been several censuses in the past that an edict ordered people to return to their ancestral homes. Gaius Vivius Maximus, the Roman Prefect of Egypt, from 103 to 107 AD, did issue a similar edict. All persons for any reason whatever are absent from their home districts are to be alerted to their home so that they may complete customary formalities of registration. According to Tectunus Papyri, Part 2, which documents petition, states that father is registering for his family for a census during the year 12 BC. I registered Papus, the son born to me, my wife Tassus, daughter of Tapas. In the year of Tiberius, Claudius Caesar Augustus, German Canus requested the name of my son Papus to be entered on a list. Throughout the history of the Roman Empire, they have issued a census to the standard government practice. A Roman census usually required people to register at their ancestral home. Appears that Luke does not line up with Roman. It does line up with Roman history. Papyrus 904, Roman census edict from Egypt. Tectunus Papyri, Part 2, petitions. Timeline events, both Mary and Joseph were warned by an angel they will have a child born in Bethlehem. 2 BC, King Herod divided into 3 parts. The Roman Empire carried out a census that forced Joseph and Mary to register at ancestral homes. After Jesus was born, he is taken to the purification ritual in Jerusalem. King Herod discovered the news that the Messiah is being born in Judea. He issues an empire-wide slaughter of all children. Slaughter starts in Bethlehem, then moves into Syria. The wise men warned Joseph and Mary about the slaughter, so they flee to Egypt after King Herod dies. Mary and Joseph travel up to Nazareth to raise Jesus. Wife of Jesus, the summary of all 4 Gospels state that Jesus was born from a virgin named Mary and her husband Joseph. Jesus had a ministry, performed miracles, arrested, crucified, buried in the tomb, were discovered by a woman 3 days later. Jesus was then reported to appear to people alive. Josephus, Tacitus, Lucian, Celsus, Marcus Serapion, Thales, Origen, Phlegon, Sanhedrin, Tolat Yeshu, Quran, and archaeological discoveries are sources that attest the historicity of Jesus in the New Testament. Josephus. At this time, there was a wise man who was called Jesus. Conduct was good. He was known to be virtuous. Many from the Jews and other nations became his disciples. Pilate condemned to be crucified and died. Those had become his disciples, not abandoned his discipleship. It reported that he appeared to them at his crucifixion, that he was alive. Since Annas was that kind of a person who became, because he perceived an opportunity with Festus having died and Avitus not yet arrived, he called a meeting of the Sanhedrin, brought James, the brother of Jesus, along with some others. He accused him of transgressing the law and handed him over for stoning. Celsus, Jesus was a sorceress, mother of Mary, an adulterous woman, by the seed of her husband, and conceived by her child by a Roman soldier called Panthera. He invented his birth. From a virgin. His mother was a poor woman in the country who was thrown out of the home of her husband, a carpenter by trade, because she was convicted of adultery. After being driven by her husband and wandering out for a time, she disgraced and gave birth to Jesus, illegitimate child, by having hired himself out as a servant in Egypt on account of his poverty. Having acquired some magical powers on Egyptians pride themselves, returned to his own country, where his sorcery won over a following by means which he claimed to be a god. According to other sources like Sanhedrin 43a, Jesus was arrested because he practiced magic and enticed Israel to go astray. After Jesus met with Caiaphas, he was then handed over to the Romans. Todat Yeshu states that Jesus was taken prisoner to the synagogue of Tiberias, where they bound him to a pillar and put a crown of thorns on his head. Jesus was put to death on the 6th hour of the eve of the Passover and of the Sabbath. The person who put Jesus to death was the Roman procurator Pontius Pilate, according to Joseph Tacitus. The crucifixion of Jesus. Our four Gospels to read that Jesus was crucified under the orders of Pontius Pilate at the 6th hour of the eve of Passover. Matthew. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Luke. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released Barabbas, who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. John. Finally, Pilate handed Jesus over to the Romans to be crucified. Josephus, Tacitus, Lucian, Marcus Serapion, and Sanhedrin taught Yeshu, personally agree with the statements made by the gospel. Ancient sources that attest the crucifixion of Jesus. There's Josephus. At the time, there was a wise man who was called Jesus. Pilate condemned him to be crucified and to die. Sent by Titus Caesar with Cyrenius and 1,000 horsemen to a certain village called Theophilus, in order to know whether it was where it was a place fit for a camp. As I came back, I saw many captives crucified. Remember, 3 of them as my former acquaintance. I was very sorry, this in mind, went with tears in my eyes to Titus, and told them, so he immediately commanded to be taken there, and had their greatest care taken them in order to their recovery. Yet 2 of them died under the physician's hands, while the 3rd recovered. Josephus not only attested the crucifixion, but also went his own person. And there's Tacitus. Christus suffered extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our own procurators, Pontius Pilate. Lucius Samson, the Christians worship a man this day who introduced their novel rites and was crucified on that account. These misguided creatures deny the gods of Greece and worship the crucified sage. Josephus, Tacitus, Lucian attest to the fact that Jesus was crucified by Pontius Pilate, and his death followed Jesus from the discipleship called Christians. And there's Tolat Yeshu. Yeshu was taken prisoner to the synagogue of Tiberias. They bound him to a pillar to allay his thirst. They gave him vinegar to drink. On his head they set a crown of thorns. Yeshu was put to death on the 6th hour of the Passover of the Sabbath. Sanhedrin 43a, he would be stoned because he practiced magic and enticed Israel to go astray. Let anyone who knows anything in his favor come forward and plead with him. But nothing found in his favor. They hanged him over in the day before Passover. Throughout Yeshua Sanhedrin tests that Jesus was arrested and crucified at the eve of Passover. Marbar Seraph. What advantage did the Athenians gain from murdering Socrates? Famine and plague came upon them as punishment for their crime, but what did the men of Samos gain from burning Pythagoras? In the moment their land was covered with sand, what advantage did the Jews gain from executing their wise king? Seraphine's wise king line is a reference to the sign posted on the cross of Jesus, King of the Jews, agreed upon by the four Gospels. Supernatural events surrounding the crucifixion. Matthew. From noon till 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried a loud voice. Mark, at noon, darkness came over the whole land, and noon till 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me? Luke, it was about noon. Darkness came over the whole land to noon till 3 in the afternoon, for the sun stopped shining the curtain temple. 22, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. When they came to Jesus and found that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. Did one of the soldiers pierce the side of Jesus with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. This is called the perfusion, the accumulation of fluid between the parietal, visceral, and pleural, called the procavity. Phlegon. In the fourth year, however, of Olympia 202, an eclipse of the sun happened greater and more excellent than any that had happened before it. 6-hour day turned into dark night, so that the stars were seen in the sky. An earthquake Bithynia toppled many buildings of the city of Achaia, Thales. In the whole world there was past atmosphere for darkness, and the rocks were sent by rain and earthquake. In many places in Judea and other districts were thrown down. This darkness, Thales, and 263rd book of history, calls appears to me without reason, an eclipse of the sun. Origin. In regarding to the eclipse of Tiberius Caesar, in his reign, Jesus appears to have been crucified, and he great earthquakes which then took place. After the death of Jesus, an earthquake devastated Israel and surrounding areas. A solar eclipse is also dark entire sky. It is also agreed by the four Gospels, supported by statements from Thales, Phlegon, and archaeology. Archaeological excavation crucifixion events. Jehona's crucified hill bone shows that the man crucified in the first century CE. This is the only archaeological evidence ever found of crucifixion in Roman times. And the skeleton was crucified during the Roman crucifixion era, found in Cambridgeshire, England. The Alexamenos Graffito is the earliest known pictorial representation of crucifixion of Jesus. Inscription made in the year 2000 AD, 200 AD. Pilate stone and carved inscription bearing the same Pontius Pilate, the Roman prefect of Judea, 2636 CE. It was discovered at the archaeological site of Caesarea Maritima in 1961. Ancient ruins of Turkey, Achaia, Turkey. Earthquake damage was set to Jerusalem. Syria Afghan rift shared between Turkey and Israel. News Report 23 shows Israel experiencing effects of earthquake in Turkey. Thales and Phlegon test crucifixion events in the Gospel supported by archaeological evidence of earthquake damage in Turkey and Israel. Both countries lie in the same fault. So a major earthquake in Turkey at any point in time can affect Israel. The resurrection of Jesus. Matthew. After the Sabbath, at dawn, the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene, other Mary, went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, going back to the tomb, and rode back to the stone south. His appearance was like lightning, his clothes was white as snow. His guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. See the place where he lay." Luke, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They had found the stone rolled away from the tomb. When they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes were gleamed like lightning stood beside him. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living amongst the dead? He is not here, for he has risen." Mark. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb and asked each other who had rolled the stone away from the entrance of the tomb. When they looked up, he saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side. They were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He is risen." John. Now, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark, and saw that the stone had been taken away from his tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and other disciples, one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she stood to look into the tomb. She saw two angels sitting where the body of Jesus, one had head, one had feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord. I do not know where they have laid him." Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know it was Jesus. She said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be a gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." She said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him, "Teacher." Josephus. Pilate condemned Jesus to be crucified and to die, and those who had become his disciples did not abandon his discipleship. They reported that he had appeared to them after crucifixion, that he was alive. Origin: Jesus, while alive, was no assistance to himself, but after that he rose after death, he exhibited the marks of his punishment and showed his hands pierced by his nails. Our four Gospels: Josephus. Christian scholar Origin agreed that Jesus was bodily raised from the dead, appeared to followers, and ascended to heaven after the Pentecost. And people rise from the dead naturally. Yes, this condition is called the Lazarus effect. A healthcare provider has declared someone dead, and suddenly the person who regains blood flow and appears to come back to life. The medical term for this phenomenon is autoresuscitation, which refers to a return of spontaneous circulation. CPR is ended. 2008, Vilma Thomas had a heart attack at home in Virginia, rushed to the hospital and pronounced clinically dead. 17 hours being pronounced dead. Their son found to be alive and alert. It is scientifically possible for humans to rise from the dead naturally. Viewpoints of other religions. Hinduism: Jesus considered a sadhu or acharya. Jesus is divine. Jesus is a wise teacher. Jesus considered an issue or Hindu saint. Buddhism: Jesus is an enlightened man. Jesus is a wise teacher or a bodhisattva, someone who is on the journey toward Buddhahood, but has the latest journey to nirvana out of compassion for others who are suffering. Islam: Jesus is the prophet. Jesus is worthy of reverence. Jesus is the manager of God. Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus will sit beside a God at the final judgment, and Jesus will return again. Baha'i: Jesus was born of a virgin. Jesus, divine Son of God. Jesus rejected worldly materialism. Jesus worked miracles, faced the trial, died on the cross. Jesus' death redeems believers. Jesus was resurrected, and Jesus ascended to heaven. Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Baha'i all accept Jesus in their worldview. All four of these religions teach that Jesus was a divine teacher who performed miracles, was crucified, rose on the third day, and will sit beside God on the day of judgment. New Testament reliability: how many women were there at the tomb? There were 6 women: Joanna, Mary Magdalene, Mary, mother of Jesus, Mary, mother of James, Mary, wife of Clopas and Salome. Now, when angels there at the tomb, there were two angels. Matthew and Mark focus on the angel sitting on the right side of the tomb, while Luke adds an additional angel. There are two angels in total. How many days was Jesus dead? 3 days. In Jewish tradition, as Jonah spent 3 days, 3 nights in the heart of the earth, Jesus will spend 3 days, 3 nights in the heart of the earth. If Jesus died on Wednesday and raised on Saturday, he would have been dead for 3 full 24-hour days. The Christian tradition, Matthew 17:22. As they were gathering in Galilee, Jesus said to him, "The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him. He'll be raised on the third day." Jesus was dead on Friday. He would have been raised on Sunday. The third calendar day since his crucifixion. Was his resurrection spiritual or physical? It was physical. John 20:24. Now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came, so the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord," but he said not this, "unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where his nails were and put my hands into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again. Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." They said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand, put it in my side. Stop doubting and believe." There's the spread of Christianity. Christianity spread through the deaths of the apostles and murder of early Christians. Death of the apostles. James. James the Great was the first apostle to be martyred for his faith. Around 44 AD, he was executed by a sword under the orders of King Herod Agrippa. 66 AD, Paul was beheaded. Peter was crucified upside down in Rome. According to Syrian tradition, Thomas was killed with a spear at St. Thomas Mount in Chennai on July 3rd AD, 7 AD. Andrew was crucified in Patras, Greece, on an X-shaped cross, now known as St. Andrew's Cross. Philip had a powerful ministry in Carthage in North Africa and Asia Minor, where he converted the wife of Roman proconsul. In retaliation, the proconsul had Philip arrested and cruelly put to death. Matthew was stabbed to death in Ethiopia. Various suggest that Bartholomew was either beheaded or flayed alive. James the Less was stoned by the crowd and received a death blow from a club. Simon was crucified in Samaria. Matthew preached the gospel in Judah and Colchis, where he was crucified. John died a natural death. The Great Fire of Rome on the 18th of July 64 AD. The fire began in the merchant shops around Rome's Chariot Stadium. Circus Maximus, after 6 days, the fire was brought under control, but before the damage could be assessed, the fire reignited and burned for another 3 days. In the aftermath of the fire, 70% of Rome had been destroyed. According to Tacitus, later Christian tradition, the emperor blamed the devastation on the Christian community in the city, initiating the empire's first persecution against the Christians. Christians were persecuted sporadically, usually locally, throughout the Roman Empire, beginning in the 1st century AD and ending in the 4th century. Yes, the early church fathers. Irenaeus, he is regarded as a martyr by the Catholic Church, by some within the Orthodox Church. Justin martyred. Justin was tried, together with 6 friends, by the urban prefect Joannes Rusticius. He was beheaded. Polycarp, bound and burned at the stake, and stabbed when the fire failed to consume his body. Tacitus on treatment of Christians. They were covered with the skins of beasts and torn by dogs. Modern historians estimate that the Christian in this period was great persecution and extending several years beyond the reign of Diocletian. As many as 3,000, 3,500 Christians were executed under the authority of imperial edicts. New Testament Archaeology, Part 1. The Israel Antiquities Authority says archaeologists have found the oldest artifact that bears a description of Bethlehem at 2,500-year-old clay seal with the name of Jesus' traditional birthplace. There's the Hall of St. Jerome. St. Jerome is known for his Latin translation of the Bible and Vulgate and considered a doctor of the church. In 335 AD, Emperor Constantine approved the cave that was a traditional site of Jesus' birth to be turned to holy site, known as the Church of the Nativity. Around AD 248, Greek philosopher Origen of Alexandria wrote the following about the grotto at Bethlehem, the cave, pointing out where he was born, and the manger in the cave where he was wrapped in swaddling clothes. Possible child home of Jesus, the excavation revealed a first century courtyard house that was partially hewn from naturally occurring rock and partially constructed with rock-built walls. Many of the home's original features are still intact, including doors and windows. A bold dating late between 2nd century BC and the early 1st century AD, the engraving reads, De Christo Augustis, which has been interpreted through kindness of a magician. New Testament Archaeology Part 2, Field of the Blood is a traditional site where Judas Iscariot died. It's located in the Valley of Hinnom near Jerusalem. There's Gethsemane, the garden at the foot of Mount Olives, in East Jerusalem where Jesus underwent the agony in the garden and was arrested for his crucifixion. Pool of Siloam was associated with miraculous healing performed by Jesus. Pool of Bethesda is where Jesus healed a paralyzed man at the pool of Jerusalem. James also wears a box that used for containing the bones of the dead. An Aramaic inscription meaning James, son of Joseph, where Jesus is cut into one side of the box. Caiaphas ossuary, highly decorated ossuary, twice described Joseph, son of Caiaphas. Caiaphas was a Jewish priest during the years of Jesus' ministry, according to Josephus. Sea of Galilee, Jesus walked on water, calmed the storm, and made Peter and Andrew the fishes of men. It's where John the Baptist baptized Jesus. It's where Jesus fed the masses with few loaves and fish and gave his Sermon on the Mount. New Testament Archaeology Part 3. The Nazareth inscription or Nazareth decree is the marble tablet in the Greek, the edict from unnamed Caesar ordering capital punishment for anyone caught disturbing graves or tombs. It is dated based on epigraphy to the first half of the 1st century AD. 2,000-year-old stone workshop discovered near Jesus turned water into wine. There's Beat Lee. Greek inscription reading Jesus is here. The Praetorium of Pilate refers to the place where the trial of Jerusalem was held. There is also the palace of Pontius Pilate, Roman prefect of Judea, which is believed to have been one of the residential places built by Herod the Great himself in Jerusalem, which at the time was also the residence of his son, King Herod II. There's Corinth, a Greek Hellenistic Roman city located at the Isthmus, which connects the mainland of Greece into Peloponnese, surrounded by fertile plains and blessed with natural springs. Ancient Corinth was a center of trade, had a naval fleet, and participated in various Greek wars. Had a cat paw print on Roman tile from around 1,500 years ago. The ancient Galilee boat, also known as Jesus' boat, is an ancient fishing boat from the 1st century AD, discovered in 1986 in Israel. New Testament Archaeology Part 4, the Shroud Turn, also known as the Golden Shroud, is a length linen cloth that bears a faint image on the front and back of a man. It has been venerated for centuries as the burial shroud wrapped the body of Jesus Nazareth under his crucifixion. The tomb of Lazarus is in Palestine, the village of Bethany, the southeast slope of Mount of Olives. The tomb is the site where Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. The site of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem is identified as the place of both crucifixion and tomb of Jesus Nazareth. The tomb complex was originally constructed in AD 345 in the time of the Byzantine Empire Constantine. The result of modern scientific tests have put the date of the building of the cave far closer to the Roman consecration of the site, 325 AD. Historical documents show around 300 AD that Constantine destroyed an empty tomb, which matches the location in the Gospel, John 1941. Now, in the place where he was crucified, there was a garden, and the garden was a new tomb, where no man was laid. So this finishes our PowerPoint presentation of God, of why God does exist. what are reasons why, and the evidence that proves that the Bible is scientifically and historically true. See you guys later for another PowerPoint presentation.